I'm going to show you how to calculate the slope of a line. Now, we don't need to have a coordinate plane or a graph in order to calculate the slope of a line. However, I'm doing it for the first problem. You can see what we did. So we have A at 3, 2, and we have B at 5, 5. So, oops, 3, 2, and B is at 5, 5. Okay. Now, slope, as we know, is the rise over run. Also delta y over delta x, which is change in y over change in x. Well, if we're not counting, what we're going to do is calculate that. And the way we calculate is by using a simple rule. If we're changing y, we want to know how does y change from A to B. So change in mathematics means subtract. So we're going to take one point, y value, so one of the y values minus the other y value. The sub 2 and the sub 1 mean the second point and the first point. And because we're starting with the second point for the y, we're going to start with the second point for the x. So we're going to take the second x value minus the first x value. It does not matter which one of these 2 points you make the first or the second. So basically, we're subtracting the y's, subtracting the x's. All right, so very simply. Subtract the y's and over subtract the x values or the x coordinates, okay? So remember, this is x and this is y. Y always comes second in our problem, in our point. So when we're doing the subtraction of y's, okay, we'll do this down here. Slope is going to equal, I'm going to use A as my first point and my B as my other point. So I'm going to do 2 minus 5. Because I chose the 2 from the A point, I have to go back and get the x from that point. So I have to go in the same order. So I'm going to take the 3 minus 5. And so my slope is going to be negative 3 over negative 2. And we simplify, so it's going to be positive 3 over 2, and that's it. You don't need to change it to 1.5 and don't change it to 1.5. Just leave it as 3 over 2. We always need to know our rise, our numerator number, and our run, our denominator number. What if you reversed it? What if you chose to have B as the second point and A as the first point? Well, that's okay. We can do 5 minus 2. 5 minus 2. Over, that's our change in y's. And now we have to go get the x from the same point we got the y from first. So 5 minus 3. So m equals 3 over 2. So either way, you're going to get the same slope. And as you can see what we did for counting, if we count from A to B, 1, 2, 3, positive 3 going up, and running 2, it's 3 over 2. So we'll get the same answer whether we count or calculate. For calculating, you don't have to have the coordinate plane. You don't have to graph your line. So let's see how we would do this if we did not have a line graphed for us. So you get to choose. This could be your first point, that could be your second. I usually work left to right, okay? So slope. Remember, this is your x, that's your y, that's your x, that's your y. So make it simple, no fancy stuff. Slope is the change in the y's over the change in the x's. So if I'm changing my y's, I'm subtracting them. So 4 minus negative 1. Because I started here to get y, I have to come and get x from that same point. So negative 4 minus 0. And now we simplify. 4 minus negative 1 is 4 plus 1. Negative 4 minus 0 is negative 4. And so we simplify a little more and we do 5 over negative 4. Okay, now a positive divided by a negative is a negative answer. So just put the negative in a neutral position or in the numerator. So it's the same as negative 5 over 4. All right. If you switched and chose this to be your first value, okay, for your first point, and this was your second, let's see how our answers come out. So if I chose this y first, negative 1, subtracting 4. Okay, so -1, subtract the 4y. I have to go back and get the x from this point. So 0 minus, that's a -4 for x. So this would give me -5 in my numerator. 0 minus -4 is +4, and there's our slope. So this is why if you have a negative in your denominator and a positive in your numerator, just bring that up to negative up to the numerator. Or look at it as a positive divided by a negative is a negative answer. All right, so it gives you a negative fraction or a negative slope. All right, let's try another one. Oh, and just to go back real quick, this would give us a decreasing line because it's a negative slope, and it's oblique, meaning it's slanted. So we can read a lot of information from our slope. All right, let's try this one. All right, we've got slope equals the change in y over the change in x. Again, I'm going to work left to right because I prefer that. It's just easier. I don't forget anything. So -1 for my y minus -1. Be careful here, okay? 4 minus -5. Well, -1 minus a negative is +1. 4 minus a negative again is plus, and that's 5. So our slope is equal to -1 plus 1 is 0. 4 plus 5 is 9. 0 divided by any number is 0. So this is a 0 slope. Okay, so this is a valid number for slope. And what it tells us is that we have a horizontal line. Even without graphing it, we can tell by the slope what kind of line it is. And that's it. It would look like this. Okay? So that slope tells us a lot of information about our line, even if we don't see a graph. All right, next. 2, 3, and 2, -6. All right, so our slope again is change in y over change in x. Our change in y is 3 minus -6. Got to go get the 2 from where I got the 3. So 2 minus 2. Simplify. 3 minus a -6 is 3 plus 6. 2 minus 2 is 0. So this gives me 9 over 0. If 0 is in your denominator, you cannot divide any number by a 0. If you try it in your calculator, you are going to get an error. Okay, and what this means is it is undefined. And this is how we write our slopes. Undefined. Okay, for any slope that has a 0 in the denominator or a 0 divide, it's an undefined slope. You want to write the word slope after it so it makes more sense, that's fine also. This line is vertical. So this slope is telling us that we have a vertical line. All right, that's what this tells us. All right, next and last problem. We have a +3, -4, and a -1, 2. To get our slope, change in y over change in x. -4 is our y, minus 2. 3 is our x, minus 1. -4 minus 2 is -6. So if you have 4 negatives and 2 negatives, you have 6 negatives. 3 minus 1 is 2. And you have to reduce this fraction. So simplify and reduce. -6 divided by 2 is -3 over 1, or we can just say -3. Now this slope is -3, and it tells us that we have an oblique line, a slanted line, and it's decreasing. And that's it. So slopes can be calculated without having to graph, but it still tells us about what our line would look like if we were to graph it. And that's how you calculate slopes.